Hello everyone, my name is Justin Melson with Happyfox Productions, and today, I don't even need to explain what we're doing. The title says it all. It's going to be a beginner's tutorial on Adobe After Effects. I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at the total runtime of this video and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of those boring beginning tutorials. And you probably, heck, some of you guys probably already know a lot of this stuff, but that's not what it's going to be. Yeah, it's going to go over the basics, but I'm going to try and do it in the most fun way. Well, not even fun. It's kind of an overstatement. The most interesting way possible. So, before we get started, I guess I'll just do a little bit of self-advertising. If you guys like, hop on over to my channel and subscribe. We just go over a bunch of different stuff, everything from filmmaking to other tutorials, to short films, action films, how to do color grading, camera reviews, you know, a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of short films too. So, enough self-advertising. Let's go ahead and jump right into the tutorials. So, first thing you do is when you open up After Effects, you're going to get this little box here, and it's probably going to have a list of all your recent projects. Mine did. I don't know where it went. I think I insulted the program too many times and doesn't want to show it anymore. So just go ahead and hit new project. So when you hit a new project, this is going to be the first page you're opened up with. You're going to get, it's basically a blank canvas. Actually, this isn't even a canvas. This is just your user interface. Now, it's pretty simple. Usually I like to work left to right. And this is a layer-based software. So what that means is with After Effects, right here's where most of the work is going to be done, right on the bottom part of your screen. So you're going to have all of your layers. This is where most of the work is going to be happening. Now on the left side, just like most software, is going to be where you store data. For example, anything like metadata, your projects, your compositions, your footage, your layers, assets, everything is going to go right in this left-hand side. And then that's why you have your little project tab. And then once you actually put effects in, which we'll be doing that shortly, you'll go into your effects control tab, and that's where you can actually control the effects that you're using. And then in the middle, this is where you're going to be doing a lot of the visual work, in terms of this is where you're going to be previewing your footage and rendering your footage and all that kind of good stuff. And then you can also manipulate your layers and your independent footage. And then on your right side is where a lot of the fun stuff happens. A lot of people, at least a lot of my friends who use After Effects don't really use the info tab. I think it's very important when you're manipulating colors and you're working from like 8-bit to 32-bit float and color spaces. You have your audio tab. Actually, that's probably the least used tab I use in After Effects. Your preview tab, one of your most important. So you can do your RAM preview and your caching. Your effects and presets, which we all know, is one of the most important tabs, because you just type in like, oh, okay, I need a curves adjustment, and it's right there. Your align, basically whenever you're doing text or layers, you could just align it or snap it to a certain area in your frame. Your libraries, actually do not use the libraries, so I cannot speak for you on that. Your character, obviously when you're doing motion graphics or any kind of text or font or anything regards to that, will be right here in your character tab. Your paragraph is essentially the same thing with your character, just kind of, almost like a Microsoft document. Do you want to go align left, centered, right? Your spacing and your tracker, which goes into a little bit more advanced, such as 3D motion tracking, 2D motion tracking, warp stabilizer, and all that kind of good stuff. And that is the basics. There you go. You're done. That's all you need to know. Just kidding. There's so much more. Now, it may look a little bit intimidating because you have all these buttons and all this stuff and all that. And then in all this, you have all that. And like, whoa, this is a whole lot of stuff. But really, it's not that bad. So let me go ahead and explain this. So first, to get your canvas, you want to go to composition and add a new composition. Now this is almost like creating a new sequence in Premiere Pro or Sony Vegas or, Movie Maker if you're that savvy. So you just basically choose what are your clip dimensions, your frame rate, your aspect ratio, all the kind of good stuff you need to know. So most of us, not most of us, everyone's in different places in their career, but a lot of us shoot on DSLRs or digital cinema cameras, and a lot of us use 1080p, and then we usually shoot 24 frames a second, unless you're doing broadcast or whatever else you're doing, maybe 29.97. But most of us do 1080p at 24. That's usually my standard and where I go, unless I'm dealing with 4K footage. And even if you're not putting footage in there, you just want to get the dimensions that you'll need. For example, if you want a square composition, you would just do 1920 by 1920. So that gives you a 1-to-1 squared aspect ratio. So now you have a square composition. But, usually if you're going to be putting in 1080p footage, you don't want that. You'll probably just want to go to the preset. Okay, there we go. Good job, Justin. So There we go, we have that. Now what we have right here is the 8 bits per channel. So what that means is when you're dealing with 8-bit footage, which most of us are, you would just leave this the same. And I have a whole nother video going into bit depth and everything, so I will not explain that here. But basically if you're dealing with, let's say, 10-bit footage or 12-bit raw, maybe you'd want to go up to 16 bits per channel. Or if you're dealing with, 3ds Max or Maya or footage from there, maybe you'd go all the way up to 32-bit float color space, but that's just a little bit more that we do not need to dive into right now. And then of course up here we have all the little things. These are just mainly keyboard shortcuts, not even keyboard shortcuts, but just you usually use these with your keyboard shortcuts. So for example, the hand tool, this is one of those things where you don't really need to click here to use. The hand tool just kind of moves around your composition. It doesn't actually move the elements in your composition, it just kind of moves it so you could visually see it better. But this just goes into your keyboard shortcuts. I don't know how many times I've said keyboard shortcuts now, but I'll keep saying it. So for example, if you want to get back to the normal cursor, you would just hit V, and now you're back. If you want to hit to the hand, you just hit H, or if you just middle click on your mouse, it does the same thing. Then you also have your camera, your rotations, your pen tool for masking, your text. So for example, if you just want to type, what's a funny quote? Not even quote. We'll just type Mark Wahlberg. I don't even know how to spell that guy's name. So Mark Wahlberg something. And so there we go. We have that there. And let's say you want to go ahead and manipulate this text a little bit. Or let's say you want to center it. So usually when I center it, I would go down here, which has our title action safe. And this is good because it can allow us to center our text, or if we're dealing with cinema or broadcast work, it lets us know where our safe frame is. I usually never have anything go outside of here. Usually I keep it here. Sometimes I'm safe and keep it there. But for example, if I want the computer to center this for me and I don't want to do it by eye, the first thing I'll do is right click and go to transform. And the transformation tab is basically everything that deals with the position, the scale, the rotation, the orientation, the anchor point, anything that deals with positioning it in the composition is where you go to the transform. So for example, I want this to be centered, so I'll go to center anchor point and layer content. So the anchor point is now centered within the text. Before it was, down there, and I don't want that. So we want it in the center. So let's go ahead and redo that. So now that it's in the center, we can hit it one more time and go to center in view. So now the text is dead center in the composition, which is great. So I don't have to do it by hand, and it's all good. And of course we can manipulate the text, and this I don't really need to go into detail. This is just like any other word processor or NLE of your choice. You can go through and change the text that you want, or the size, or the tracking, how spaced it is. Oh, that's actually the wrong one. The tracking, if you want it to be really thin, or you could even do some animation where it goes whatever you want to do. Of course, bolding it, all caps, all that kind of fun stuff is what you can do with the text. And then of course you could even go through into your layer and go into your layer styles. And of course you could add a drop shadow, which you can't see it now because we're against black, but we could see it a little bit better here because this is an alpha channel. So, we could add all that kind of fun stuff, which is great, but we don't need to go too into detail with that. Now, the next thing I want to go over is probably the most important thing in Adobe After Effects. And I was never taught this. No one, my mom didn't teach me this, my grandparents, my teachers, nobody taught me how important this is, but I feel like it's my duty to teach you guys. So there's a really important thing. If you go to File, you guys there? Okay, cool. Let me just wait till you're there. Okay, you're there? Okay, great. Go to Save As. Boom. And just like that, you can save your project to whatever you want, hit save, and there you go. And now all you have to do is hit Control S every couple seconds and you're good. So next thing is layers. So let's go into our layer tab. Now the way layers work is basically in After Effects there's various different kinds of layers. There's a text layer, there's a solid, there's a light, camera, null object. These are all different kinds of layers. So a text is just like what we just did, create a text, great. But let's say if you want to make a solid, let's say if we want this background to be blue. So then we would go into the new layer settings and hit solid, and then we can go here and then you can make this, let's say we make it blue. Perfect. Make comp size, hit OK, and now we have a blue solid the size of the composition. And then the possibilities are infinite whenever you have a solid. Now that we have a physical solid in our composition, we could add a ton of different effects. We can add a ramp if we would like, a gradient ramp. Boom. Add a radial ramp. There's a ton of different stuff you can do. Or if you want to add a soft vignette, if you guys know what a vignette is, it's kind of like a soft gradient around the edges of your frame. You could go to the elliptical mask tool, and the way I hit that was I just held on it. So I didn't just click it once, I clicked and held it, and went to the ellipse tool, and basically you can just double click it and it'll create a oval. And then you can go here to your mask settings, and this tab is basically just everything that you can use to control your mask. And the way you get there is you just hit the little down arrow, there'll be a little mask tab, and then you just hit mask 1 because we only have one mask that we created. And then we can either invert it or you can hit subtract. And from this point, now of course, this is kind of all self-explanatory. The mask feather is just feathering. We can feather it. The mask opacity, how prominent do we want it to be? We can bring it up or down. And the expansion is, do we want it to be bigger or smaller? And I kind of just did that opposite. Smaller or bigger. And of course, we could always go down and turn the overall opacity down. So now we have a soft blue vignette all around the scene, which is really cool. And another thing that's also nice to learn that, it's just good to know is, for example, let's say you're doing a lot of work and you have a lot of masks everywhere and you have these yellow lines all over your composition and you're like, man, I just want to see my frame for what it is. I just want to see it without all these masks everywhere. All you have to do is click this button. And boom, it's gone. It hides all the masks in your composition. Right now we only have one, but let's say, for example, if we had a bunch of stuff going on, like we got that, then we got this, then we have that, and then let's say you're doing a lot of work and there's just masks everywhere and you're like, man, just undo it. And it's great. Now, there are a lot of other different tools in Adobe After Effects that make life really easy, such as the Roto Brush tool. That is one of my favorite tools, and unfortunately, I don't have footage in here right now to show you that, but I'm sure if you just search up a tutorial, Roto Brush, you'll find a plethora of different tutorials that you could use. But like I said, let's just go back to here. So right now we have one solid, which is in our solids folder. We've created one blue solid. We have one composition, which is this one. Okay, so now I want to show you guys the effects tab. So let's go on ahead and, or not even footage, let's just import a picture that I have. So I have this picture here of our lead actor Dylan in our last short film, Brawl of the Century. And if you want to see that film, the link is in the description below. So this is a shot of him putting beer on his waffles. So let's say we want to do a little bit more to this. We can say, okay, well, what do we want to do, guys? We can add some color correction. We have our color correction tab. We have some distortion, keying. There's a whole lot of stuff we can do. Let's actually mess with his face a little bit because it's After Effects. Why not? That's the first thing I did when I first started learning it. So let's go to the liquify tool, drop that on here, and now we can do a whole bunch of fun stuff. So if we just zoom in, move here, let's see, what do we want to mess with? Let's maybe move his eyes in, because why not? Give him some small eyes and a big nose. And there you go. Now he looks totally different, and all we have to do is just add an effect, and then once that effect is selected, we just go in and start messing around. So that is great, but let's say we don't want to do that. Let's say we actually want to do some color work. This shot is already color graded, but let's say we want to do a little bit more. So we can go into our curves, which is in our color correction tab, or let's say, for example, if we want to go here, maybe add some hue and saturation, just click that, and the next thing you know, you can go, okay, maybe the shot has too much red. So go into your reds and desaturate the reds, which kind of desaturates the entire shot, because that's what the shot is red. But now you have things that are yellow, such as these waffles that still have color. Or you could do vice versa and take out all the yellows. So now his waffles are desaturated. But I kind of like it the way it is. You can go in, add a little bit more, add more contrast, take away contrast. And then once you're done, you're like, okay, just move on, which is great. Another cool thing to do is how to duplicate. So let's say if you want to copy this, let's say you just want a whole another instance of this frame. Sometimes a lot of people do, you hit Control C, hit Control V, which is an easy way to do it. But the easiest way in Adobe After Effects to copy something or duplicate something is to just hit Control D. Now that's going to be, you're going to be thinking that in your sleep, because once you get started with compositing, that's going to be all you do is duplication. So you just hit Control D, do some more work, maybe change this to add. Let's say you're just doing all your compositing, you know, oh, okay, great. This is exactly what I want. Oh, it's Control D, it's got to get another layer. Let's do this for some reason, you know, bring this up, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you want to make this like this or whatever. And you're just duplicating things all day. That's just kind of how it works. Or you could just select it all and delete. Simple as that. Now, another thing that you need to know is, let's say if you have a slow computer, this little button right here for your preview window will show you how much resolution you're using, which is, you know, just how much processing power your computer needs to buffer this image. So right now, my computer is decently beefy. It has a GTX 980 Ti with the Intel 5960X 8-core with processor with hyperthreading. So I'm getting like 16 virtual cores, which is definitely good enough for what we're doing, let alone this frame. So I have it on full resolution. But for some of you guys, maybe your computer can't buffer it. So you just go to half or go to third or go to quarter. So if you go to quarter, it is very pixelated. We could barely even read that says Bud Light right there. You can go to half, or you can go to full. But something to note is, even though you have it set on maybe third here, when you set it to render, it'll still render in full resolution. So what you have to do now is go into your preview window. Now, when you want to render this out, not as a video file, but just so you can preview what you're seeing, you want to go here and change it to whatever you want to be. So if you want to render it or preview it at a third of the resolution, you have to make sure you hit a third. Just because it's at full here, just because we're viewing it in full resolution here, doesn't mean you're going to get a full resolution preview. You kind of have to go over here and determine what you want. And there's also a lot of other things that you can mess with in here, like if you want to see your mask, or if you want to play it back at, maybe skip a frame or skip 2 frames, or maybe even play it back at a different frame rate if you're doing slow motion, for example. Now I'm just going to show you guys one more thing before I actually get into an example that you guys can actually follow along with. So let's say you do all your effects and everything, and you're like, okay, this is exactly what I want. You want it to look like this. Looks great. So now all you have to do is render it out. So you want to render out this overexposed shot. So all you have to do is go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and now it's going to bring up your render queue. Now, unlike other software and NLEs, you just usually go to export and you type in your settings and everything and you're good to go. With Adobe After Effects, you can either create a render queue or you can add it to your Adobe Media Encoder, which is another Adobe software that handles rendering for you. So you can render in the background and continue working on your project. So usually, depending on your computer, you probably want to render it out to ProRes. Everyone's different, so I can't really say. Usually I do DNx HD or H.264 for the web because nobody's going to really notice, you know, and it saves me a little bit of hard drive space, which ultimately results to a little bit more money saved. So I usually do H.264 full quality. Of course, you guys could do DNx HD or whatever codec you would like. I usually just keep it at QuickTime for the format. Hit OK, and then I usually go into my best settings. Now this determines the resolution that you're going to be rendering to. So you could render it in half resolution if you'd like, which would be 960 by 540. But, you know, usually 99% of the time I keep everything at best and full, unless you're rendering out proxies and you're dealing with Red Dragon and Arri Alexa raw footage. And then maybe you'd want to render out some proxies, which is a whole nother way to do that. So you just hit OK, and then you would just go into your output, and then you would output to wherever you're going. For example, this project, I'd probably go into my visual effects, save it to whatever, and then you would just hit render, and then you'd be all done. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and show you guys how I would use this in a real life situation. So like I said, we have this short film here in which if you guys really want to see this film, like I said, the link is in the description, or you could just check it out. It's actually pretty fun. So this is the shot that we're going to be working with right here. So that looks like a regular shot, right? You know, he just looks down at the heart and he looks up and he gets punched in the face. Don't really notice anything different. But here's what's different. We have the actor, we have the lead actor or the co-star still in the mirror after he punches him in the face. So let's just check that out. And I really don't want that. I mean, some people it might be fine, but I'm pretty nitpicky and the details always count. So Luckily, I had another take where he wasn't in the mirror. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to bring this shot into Adobe After Effects, and I'm going to do some work and do some painting work and roto work and replace this shot and make it look like the way it looks in the final film, which is him not in the mirror. So I'm going to right click and go into replace with After Effects composition. And then it's going to bring up Adobe After Effects. Perfect. So now we have this, and the color work has already been done. I'm just going to go ahead and undo that at the moment. So we have this shot. It's like, great, but now we need that other shot where he is not in the mirror. That clean plate is what it's called. So I'll go back into Premiere Pro, and I have that shot actually right here. It's a clean plate. So I'll go on ahead and bring that into After Effects as well. Okay, awesome. So we have this clean plate here. Now this actually isn't too important. And when I say it's not too important, as in the duration doesn't really matter. So what I'm gonna do is just right click and go to time and go to freeze frame. And again, these are all the things that you guys are gonna learn throughout the months and throughout the years of using Adobe After Effects, because I'm assuming if you're watching this tutorial, you're interested in it, and you know you're gonna be working with this software for a while. So just go to time, freeze frame. So now this shot is completely frozen in time. So I'm gonna copy it, Control C, and I'm gonna go over to my main shot where he gets punched, and I'm gonna paste it. And I'm gonna drag it over to extend it to be the same duration as the previous clip. So what I'm gonna go on ahead and do is I'm gonna go on ahead and do some tracking. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click this, and then I'm gonna go into what I said prior. We have our tracker window down here, and if for some reason it's not there, you could just go to Window, Tracker, and it'll be somewhere around there. You know, sometimes stuff likes to hide, don't know why. Just go ahead and click this, and we're gonna hit Track Camera. Now there's multiple ways you could track something like this. You could export this as a JPEG sequence and then go into Mocha and maybe do a planner track on where we need to replace it. But I like to avoid the hassle. And with visual effects, it's an art form, but it's also about efficiency, and you have to work as fast as you can. Not as fast as you can, but you have to work as fast as you can while still producing really good work. That's the way I think about it. You know, have fun, produce good work, and do it fast. So what we have here are some track markers exactly where we need them, right on this little mirror. So I'm going to go ahead and click on one of them. I'm going to right click and hit Create Null and Camera. So what that essentially did was it's going to create a null object, which is what we can use to link our track data to, and it's going to create a camera. Now this is the difference between a 3D track and a 2D track. A 2D track, you don't need to create a camera and all that kind of stuff because it's just a two-dimensional surface that you're tracking. But with a 3D track, you do need to create a camera. So for example, if we were to go to the top view, we could see right here that our null object isn't moving. It's just the camera that's moving right here. But it's not moving a whole lot because it is a pretty stationary 2D shot. So there's not much we could do about that. It just makes our life easier. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is take this other shot of the clean plate of the mirror, and I'm just going to basically make this a 3D layer. Since we're dealing in 3D space now, all the elements need to be 3D. Not all of them, but you know, the ones that are going to be composited into the shot now need to be 3D for the most part. I'm going to take the anchor point and move it right in the center of this mirror. And then I'm going to go and get the position. So I'm going to hit P on the keyboard and bring up the position. Copy that. Hit P here and paste it. Now that's great, but it's too close. Now that the position is the same, the scaling and everything kind of got all messed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and scale that down. So now what we're gonna do here is essentially just matching it to look the same. So I'm gonna bring up my position. Now I just wanna get it to sort of match. Scale it up, bring it over. Bring it over, and we're just about there. Maybe it's scaled a little bit too much, maybe like 51%. Doesn't have to be perfect because the audience is never even gonna, the whole point of this effect is that the audience shouldn't know that it was a visual effect. You know you did your job right if the audience can't call out that there's a visual effect shot there. That's the way I think about it. If someone could say, hey, that looks like that was painted out, then you did your job wrong. But if they don't notice, then you did your job right, because that's the whole reason we're doing this, is to cover up my mistake of having him in the mirror. So let's see. Okay, looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit T, bring up my opacity. Opacity essentially just means transparency or translucence. Just going to bring that up. And now I'm just going to go ahead and mask around this area because that's all I really want. And that goes into our pen tool like I've mentioned before. So we just click. And the way I brought that up is I just hit G on the keyboard. And before you can memorize your keyboard shortcuts, that's totally fine. If you need to click on the pen tool, that's fine. But again, throughout years of doing it, you'll eventually know, oh, just hit G and it brings it up. And the next thing I'm going to do is hit F on the keyboard and feather it. So I'm going to just feather the edges just a touch. Not too much though, because we don't want to see the other one. Cool. So check this out. That mirror is now replacing the other one. But we do have a slight problem. Well, two problems. One of them is easy to fix. We need to add motion blur because when I was filming this shot, I was at a 180-degree shutter angle, or on a DSLR, 1/48th of a second if you're shooting 24 frames a second. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my composition settings, and we're pretty familiar with this area now. Now I'm going to go into the advanced, and then in the advanced you can see your shutter angle and all the little details that you really don't deal with on an everyday basis, but when you're compositing, all this stuff matters. So I actually had mine at 172.8 on the Blackmagic Cinema camera. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to hit this button here, which enables motion blur for the entire composition. And then I'm going to hit this shot because I want motion blur on this shot. So the way this works is, if you want motion blur on your composition in general, you need to hit this button, because if you don't hit this button, but you hit this here, you're still not going to get it. So this is basically saying, hey, do you want motion blur? Like, do any of your elements in this composition need motion blur? I'm like, well, yeah, you know, they do. Like, you know, I'd like some motion blur. It's like, all right, you click that button. But now, which one of these need motion blur? Well, this is the only one that's moving. In fact, to make it easy for you guys, I should probably rename this. Hit Enter on the keyboard to rename something, and I'll call this a clean plate of the mirror. Cool. So now I'm like, yeah, we need some motion blur. You know, it's nothing that you would really notice, but it helps. It helps sell the realism. So that was the first issue. The second issue is, check this out. The hand, this is in front of this hand. So we need to do a quick roto job to make it go behind it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find this. I'm just going to duplicate it. Like I said, Control D, it's going to be your new best friend. Bring it on top. And then I'm going to hit G. And I'm just going to do a quick garbage matte or mask. It's not really a matte, but it's going to bring that. Basically, this is called a rotoscoping. Now, rotoscoping could be a very painstakingly long process, and sometimes it could be very quick. And sometimes you might rotoscope for 2 days and realize you're not even animating the mask, which has happened before. But so let's see. Let's go ahead and hit M on the keyboard. It brings up all of our mask properties. Going ahead and hit the keyframe, and the stopwatch. And this is essentially how to do animation in Adobe After Effects. So if you want to animate something, you have to hit the stopwatch button, which is why so many of these, this is why so many of our effects have little stopwatches next to them. So if you want to animate something, for example, if you bring in, what's a good example? Curves. I'll bring in curves again. If you want to animate your curves, you got to hit that little stopwatch button. Anytime you see a stopwatch means you can animate it. In a nutshell, I mean, that's not necessarily what it only means. I mean, there's ways to animate other things with use of expressions and all that, but just to simplify it. So I'm going to go ahead and animate this. I'm going to hit page down on the keyboard, go to the next frame, and I'm just going to move this up over a little bit, page down, and now it is all the way over here. So I'm just going to, make sure I'm covering this up completely. Actually, what I'm going to do is just hit none so I can kind of get the whole thing. Page down, and our job is done. That's all we really needed to roto out. Now I'm going to bring this completely out of here. Hit add. So now that mirror is behind, but we have a very sharp edge, so we could just fix that with the feather. Maybe bring this up a little. Perfect. So now check this out. It is behind, and boom, just like that, we have a completed shot. And now we have that color grade that I did. So I'm just going to create a new adjustment layer, And the way I did that was hit Control Alt Y, or you can go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. And an adjustment layer is basically what it sounds like. It's just an adjustment layer. You could throw anything on there and it'll affect everything below it. So if I want to add color correction to this entire composition, or if I want to add an effect to this entire composition, then I'd throw an adjustment layer on top of all of it. So I'm just going to paste that grade that I had, and it's going to throw that grade on top of everything. Because had I not done that, the grade would only be applied to, you know, everything besides that hand, and that mirror, which we don't want because it looks kind of like it's coming from heaven, like a mirror from heaven. So we don't want that. So we want to go ahead and undo that, and then just go here, turn that back on, and boom, we have a completed shot. Now that looks pretty good. Nobody's ever going to know that he was standing there, which means we did our job right. And the great thing about Adobe Dynamic Link is once this is done, you just have to hit Save, Control S, go back into Premiere Pro, and then I'm probably just going to, so we don't actually need this one right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And check this out. We don't even have to render it. It is completely and that's it. We're all done. And that is the easiest way to use After Effects. Just problem solve. After Effects is a lot of problem solving. That's why filmmakers are some of the best problem solvers out there, because you know, there's so many problems that can come up when you're filmmaking in all aspects, whether it's writing to pre-production, to production, to post-production, to visual effects, anything, which is why it's just problem solving. You know, let's say if a 3D camera track didn't work, maybe you could just do a 2D track and just track something like the chair or something else, or maybe you'd have to track it by hand. Who knows? I mean, that's kind of the way it works. In After Effects, we only touched basis on it. I mean, this is one of those tutorials where it's like, hey, you know, you got some of the basics down, but I mean, there's so much to learn, which is why you have inspirations like Andrew Kramer that go through and go really in depth and create products for Adobe After Effects, because that's what they do and that's what they do great. Me, I mean, I'm not a professional visual effects artist, so I just I use Adobe After Effects for my personal projects and for client work, and I just figured, no, why not share some information? Although I know this information is all over the internet, but I just figured I'd put my 2 cents out there. Well, that's going to be it for this tutorial, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end. I hope I was able to teach you guys something fun or new about Adobe After Effects. It's definitely a fun program to dive into, and I'd recommend you guys going in there and just, you know, wreak havoc on After Effects and just do your thing and learn as much as you can. If you guys would like, one more time, I'm going to self-advertise. If you guys would like, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. There's going to be a whole lot more filmmaking stuff going on, tutorials and all that kind of fun stuff going on every other day basis. So please feel free to check it out. We also have a website coming out soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.